My Lords, I agree with what other noble lords have said about President Putin's disastrous behaviour and the need for sanctions adequate to bring him and his cronies down, and so won't repeat it again now. But, my Lords, if you want to know how you've got to where you are, it often helps to look back at where you have been. And I fear we have handled the Russian bear very short-sightedly since the wall came down in 1989. We would not be where we are today if we had behaved more generously toward the Russian people over the last 31 years. My Lord, I regard the Russian people as my friends because during my teenage years in the 1950s, my mentor in life was Fred Cripps, Stafford Cripps's elder brother, who had lived in Russia for several years before the revolution of 1917. He told me that the Russian peoples were rare because, like us and the Dutch, they had a sense of humour and could laugh at themselves. So they should have been our friends even then. My Lords, I also had the huge privilege of meeting Alexander Solzhenitsyn in 1983, 6 years before the wall came down, and so was inspired to do what I could to support his dissident network inside the Soviet Union and to help a number of Soviet Jews to escape to the West. One thing you didn't do, my Lords, within the hearing of Alexander Zayevich was to say Russia when you meant the Soviet Union, or Russians when you meant Soviets. My Lords, we have behaved very foolishly towards Russia since 1989 in at least two ways. First, it really does seem that we broke the promise we gave to Gorbachev, that NATO would not expand to the east if the wall came down. And second, we have turned down several offers from Russia to set up free trade agreements between us from the Atlantic to the Urals, as Putin put it in one of his offers in 2014, to which offer the EU promptly replied by offering association agreements leading to NATO membership to Georgia, Armenia, Moldova, and the Ukraine. My Lords, I know there are those who now deny that we promised the new Russia that NATO would not expand to the east after 1989. But they should read an article in this month's English edition of Der Spiegel entitled NATO's Eastward Expansion. Is Putin right? I will put a copy in your Lordship's library. My Lords, they should also read an article in the Mail on Sunday on the 22nd of February by Mr. Peter Hitchens entitled Why I Blame the Arrogant, Foolish West for the Crisis in the Ukraine. And for good measure, my Lords, they should also read We Blew Our Chance to befriend Putin by Mr. Rod Liddell in The Spectator of the 19th of February, which puts the crisis, noble lords laugh, but they clearly don't know this, which puts the crisis into its broader historical question. I will put copies of both these articles in your Lordship's library as well, and I trust those who have been sniggering will read them. My Lords, I have time to mention one other point as to why the Russian people have been uniquely disadvantaged since 1989. None of the countries which lived under communism had access to what we call civil society. No freedom of speech, no independent judiciary, no charities, no free market, no private insurance, no democracies. When we set up our know-how funds in 1990 to help the peoples thus enslaved to recover these vital things, I served on our initiative in Poland to help the newly liberated Poles to set up a free insurance market. I was lucky, my Lords, because we could find Poles who remembered civil society, including life and other insurance, for example, from before 1945, before the Iron Curtain cut them off from the civilized world. And so we were able to help them resurrect it without too much difficulty. Not so in the then new Russia, my Lords, whose people had been deprived of civil society for another whole generation, for another 45 years. So you couldn't find anyone there who remembered it. Once again, my Lords, the Russian people were on the wrong side of history. My Lords, I conclude by agreeing with noble lords who think that Putin may have taken leave even of his KGB senses. that he is not supported by the majority of the Russian people, and that if we and others can impose stiff enough sanctions, we may be able to bring him and his cronies down. We could then work for a new and prosperous relationship with the Russian people, who remain our natural friends.